Alrighty, so this is the second webinar of our series, Investigating the Ocean and How to Track Ships Like a Pro using OSINT. The outline or agenda for today is that Davide, he will be sharing the behind the scenes of his reporting for about 15 minutes. Then Fede and I, we will share some tips and tricks from the data and research team, which will take about 50 minutes. And then we hopefully will have enough time to answer all of your questions, go into the platforms, do some live demos and everything it will be relevant for your reporting. And the recording and the slides will be shared with everyone after the session. Davide, the floor is yours.
Hello again. So I'll start with the first slide. So today I'll talk about this story that I elaborated over, I think it was almost a year from the moment that I did my fieldwork to the publishing moment with The Guardian together with The Smoke. And it's about two floating fish factory that have been plundering sardinella off the coast of Guinea-Bissau, mostly illegally. And well, it's this story. I think it's particularly important because of the quantity that has been taken away, and it's sardinella. It's a species that has been used to produce, and it's used to produce fish meal and fish oil, which is a raw material that is fundamental to develop aquaculture worldwide. So there is a big surge, especially in West Africa, but also in other part of the ocean, to find like fatty fish and to elaborate it, to transform it into fish meal and fish oil. In this case, it was happening, and we go to the next slide. It was happening off Guinea-Bissau, which is located in West Africa, and it has a particularly geography because it's on the mouth of a Jebba River, where there are like an archipelago that is composed of many different islands. So there are a lot of artisanal fishers that live there, and it's not that easy to access it, and that's why I think it's a good case to talk about OSINT tools for this webinar. And my starting point was about a conversation I had with someone in Bissau when I did my fieldwork there. And this person was hired on top of one of the fish meal boat, which is technically it's a carrier vessel that it has been turned into like a fish meal factory boat. And so he was talking to me about the dire conditions and the amount of fish that has been turning into fish meal and fish powder, thanks to the collaboration between Turkish sailors in the area and the MPA of Guinea-Bissau, and this Chinese floating fish factory. So luckily, I had a very good starting point because he remembered by heart the coordinates where he was on board. He has been there for 7 months together with the whole crew. So during that time, he had to fill out records, and so the numbers, the exact numbers of the coordinates, it's something that it was very precious for me. And next slide. Starting from this coordinate, where I show it on the slide before, it was on Google Maps. I use a Global Fishing Watch to see if there was an actual presence of those boats across time. So this is like just anonymous images at the first sight, but on the left, you could see like through the tool of Global Fishing Watch, a way to see vessel presence. So it's like detecting where are vessels in a specific area and in a specific time window. In this case, I could see there are two different stains, like let's say like white stains, that it means there is a concentration across time of some vessels. And so like cleaning up what has been like a vessel presence, I came up to two different vessels that were there for a long time, and they were moored for many months in this location, and you can see on the right image. So just to make it short, this is like a vessel that has been moved, and it has been moored in one specific location and didn't move there from there for a long time. Next slide. And thanks to this information, I could see what was the actual vessels. And actually, I only had one vessel at the beginning, but then thanks to the tool, I found another vessels, the one that I just showed. So there were two main vessels that you can see on the written on the left. But I could not see much movement apart from that. I was lucky enough to find one of the Turkish vessels that were doing the actual fishing. So they were fishing and then bringing to the fish factory to process it. And I could see that through the patterns that it's very odd. It was just moving around, fishing, and then bringing the fish to the fish factory. And next slide, please. So this is the final elaboration I did with the data that I could collect through Global Fishing Watch. Like every dot, for every dot there is behind a vessel, and so they've been moving in front of the archipelago. But of course, these are the signals that has been communicated in the sense that were not off. But many of those vessels had patterns that were very strange in the sense that they were coming on and off very very often, and they were on mostly close to the port. But then they were off. So this is not a proof that they are doing something illegal, but in general, I think it's the first hint that something weird is happening, or there is some illicit activity, especially when it's like happening on a recurring base. Next, please. So on the port of Bissau, I could take photos of some of, well, I took photos of all the vessels that were docked in Bissau, that they were not active. They were like fishing vessels that were just staying there in the moment that I visit the country. And that was very important to match these vessels with other information that I could collect. The source that give me the coordinate of the fish meal factory. Also, since I was on board for 7 months, and that's what happened often, crew members take videos and photos of what happens on board. And so in the next slide, we could see that this is the recording that he did during the month he has been working on board of the factory. And we could see that there are like two in this like screenshot from the videos, like two Turkish vessels with identifying number, which is one is IMO number, and then another registry number. And it was very precious to match this number with the pictures that I took. If you're not able to take pictures, then there's going to be other tools, open source, that Federico or Fernanda will mention to you. But this is quite important to understand where a specific vessel has been moving in a given time. Also, another important information from this was the type of species that were fishing, and of course that confirmed like what was the ultimate purpose of this activity. Yes, the next one. So the big challenge here was the ownership. So I have two fishing vessels, two fish factories that I know from sources, but they are actually having, one was a Dominican flag and the other one was a Gabon flag. So from that, finding out who is the actual owner, it was quite difficult, and it was possible only through a collaboration also with other journalists, because the IMO number that I will explain soon. It can come with specific data that are quite well updated, and there are open source platforms that you can find who are the actual owner. But then the company registries in the different countries are not always easy to access. In this case, where in Hong Kong, that the company was looking for, and well, like journalists from the Smog and journalist Regina Lam helped me quite a lot in finding out the actual names. And the next one. So my purpose was to find out the supply chain. I mean, I knew that they was doing something illegal. I knew the ownership at this point of the Turkish vessels and of the factories. But I wanted to know where these products, raw material, will go. It's a huge amount, millions of dollars of value of commodity that has been moved. So I look for the crack in the supply chain in the sense like the first actors were not really easy to find out if they were the actual shippers. But there was another vessels that it was the one that transported the fish meal, fish oil from the factories to the port of Dakar, which was the main hub from where it was shipped all around the world. And it was a Chinese flagged vessels. And through the company registry, it was possible to see who was the actual owner of these vessels. And this name appears also in a company that is called Bissau Wansheng, which is publicly on the internet say that is producing fish meal, fish oil in Guinea-Bissau and it is exporting worldwide. And it gives the quantity. And that was very important for me to then check into other database what was the export registry, and I could see that the main destination were reported destination were in Turkey, were in Chile, and Ecuador. Probably were not all the destinations, but let's say that they were the reported destination from the countries that receive it, because my initial and final intuition is still that the most of the actual raw material would enter the European Union, but it's not that easy to obtain import data from European Union countries or from the UK. Well, here it's we are almost at the end. The final destination then will be aquaculture. It is mm, it's like a farm everywhere in the world. It's like when it turns into a raw material, a fish meal and fish oil, it's quite easy to move around. To me, it's still like a good question I have is like how from West Africa they would have shipped fish meal and fish oil to Latin America, while there is already a big production of fish meal and fish oil in Latin America. But we are talking about like a global market that also has to secure a certain stability in terms of production and yeah, and then supply chain. So I think maybe I still have some minutes left. Oh, not.
You do actually, if you want to share, to go back to a slide of yours.
Ah, okay. Yeah, maybe I run too fast, but I think this is in general, I think this is like a kind of a new frontier of what is going to become like a fishery, because last year, for the first time, I think the production of aquaculture surpassed the production of wild catch. So what is the shift that is happening, and I see through this investigation is like the low what is like a low value species are being caught to feed like high value species that are like farmed somewhere else. So this is not oftentimes is not really combating like what is illegal fishing. There is just a shift, and I think it's particularly dangerous, and it's warning to see specifically in West Africa what is happening in terms of searching for oily species that are taken away from the actual use of the population, not only coastal population, but also from internal population that use these low value species in order to be extracted and then sold somewhere else. So the supply chain of these, it's quite complicated but necessary to tackle. Thanks.
Thank you, Davide. And I think that your story, it really illustrates how everything is interconnected, right? And exactly as you were saying, how certain species have more market value than others, and how they just feed into, they feed others that are more explored. So really recommend this reading. It is linked in the presentation for anybody who wants to check it out afterwards. And here is Davide's contact as well if you have any leads or would like to collaborate with him. Moving on to some tips and tricks from our end. And before we jump to the presentation, I actually wanted to give a community shout out because a person that attended our previous webinar shared these awesome tools with me by email afterwards. And I think that this is the spirit that we want to create with this webinar series, just presenting tools, platforms, resources to build a community of ocean journalists that have more access to tools, know the possibilities that are out there, and can apply them to their reporting. So the first one is the Marine Protection Atlas, where it's talking about all the MPAs, there's status, it has other layers of fishing protection and mining protection. The second one is the international funding overview. So it's talking about how much money is going to basically conservation activities across the world. It's mapping the value that's going, the activities, in which countries. There are a lot of land restoration projects, but a lot of marine projects as well. And lastly, I linked our previous session of investigating the ocean. So if you would like to know more about legal frameworks and ocean governance, you can check that out. And I also wanted to begin with a transdisciplinary approach. I'm currently reading this book, and it's a very good one, but it's not talking about journalism. It's actually talking about biology. But I think it is really aligned with our presentation today, especially when they say here, our understanding of the biological world has always been fundamentally linked to how we are able to perceive it. And what we can perceive is tied to technologies we have foreseen. And I really like this because it relates to this image here. This is what I had accessible with my naked eye, the beautiful Bay of Sines in Portugal, which is the largest port of the country. But if I look at the same thing on Vessel Finder, I see something completely different, right? You can see the bay here, the curve that it makes. But then I have access to a lot of information. I know that in this image, we have oil tankers and fishing vessels and container ships, sailing boats. So I love these layers, and when they overlap and when we look at something and we're like, maybe I don't have the whole information that I need now, but I know where to get it and I know the resources that can help me. So just for Vessel Finder, I use it a lot, but you only have access to it for 24 hours, and then you need to pay if you want historic data about a certain region or a vessel. And then also in this slide, I put one goal for the session, at least for me. I'm sure that my colleagues here have other goals, but it is that we collectively create the mindset that we can find information about any ship we want towards the end. So what we will cover today, it's basically going to be an expansion of the written toolkits that I have shared by email, part 1 and part 2. We're going to be talking about vessel identifiers, corporate structure, crew information, some OSINT formulas and how you can tailor them to your own research. We're also going to be talking about tracking tools, satellite imagery, port records, and vessel and fishing regulation. So let's start with the very base of our research. What identifies a vessel? And I thought that for this, to talk about this, it would be interesting to have an example. So I selected a vessel that is called Dama's Wave in certain platforms, but MV Golden Yara in other platforms. How do I know that it's the same vessel? Because it has the same IMO, and the IMO is the identity of the ship, the tattoo. The IMO will never change, no matter if the ship changes its flag, if it changes its ownership, the IMO stays the same. And when I'm analyzing ships, I think it's really useful to compare them to people. So think of ships as having nationalities, ID cards, phones, and how would that translate to the Dama's Wave or the Golden Yada? So the flag, it's currently navigating on the flag of St. Kitts and Nevis. The IMO, which is this identity number that we were talking about, it is given by the International Maritime Organization, and it's the series of numbers that you see on your screen now. The MMSI is the Maritime Mobile Service Identity, and I like to think of it as our phone because it is the radio program of the ship, basically. And it's also a series of numbers. This can change over time, but you will find this in a lot of different platforms. The port of registry for this specific ship is Vietnam, and the vessel type, which I related to the profession of the ship, it is a cargo ship. And I now encourage you all to open Global Fishing Watch, open the map. Ella, if you could please share in the chat the link to Global Fishing Watch. And I have a question for you, and I really want us to get hands-on. I would like to know, where did the MV Golden Yara dock on the 3rd of March of this year? And I also have a bonus points. If you can tell me what was the timestamp and for how many hours that ship stayed docked. So I'll give it 2 minutes for you to go inside of Global Fishing Watch and explore if, based on the IMO number that I gave you here, 8915299, you can find out this information for me. Yes, Olga, the IMO has been shared by Ella in the chat, and it is 8915299. And here are the instructions in the scene. I want to know where it docked on the 3rd of March of 2026. Also, a reminder that if you're having troubles navigating the platform, at the end, after the Q&A, we can enter the platforms together and take any questions about how to navigate them. Alrighty, because of time, I am moving on with the answer that we have here and the screenshot that I took from Global Fishing Watch. So you can see here that it docked actually in Turkey on March 3rd, 2026 at 12:38 a.m. And it was docked there for 20 hours. And then if you hover over, you can see the whole trajectory it made for a time being. You can even create a GIF if you click on this button, which is a very neat function of the platform. And you might say, well, that's cool, but what if I don't really know the vessel that I'm interested in? What if I'm interested in a port or in a specific EZZ in a country and the coastline of that country? So I got here Brazil as an example. And I went again to Global Fishing Watch and downloaded all the information of the vessels that were inside of the Brazilian exclusive economic zone. So then you can see here the data set that it generated for me. I can see the timestamp that these vessels were inside of Brazil's EZZ, what type of vessels they are, if they're a passenger ship, a cargo, a fishing ship, their radio number, as we said, their IMO. And from there, there's all stories that I can craft. So maybe I want to see how many fishing boats are inside of Brazil's EZZ for a certain period of time. Or maybe my story is about the national oil company, Petrobras, and I want to see how many active ships they have on Brazilian waters. Or maybe me and my editor were both interested to see what's the foreign flag that pops up the most in Brazilian waters. You will have all of those answers just a click away from Global Fishing Watch. And another question that might be popping up to your mind is maybe you're interested in a very specific area, right? Like a port, for example. Um, so back to the original example of the port of Sines, I downloaded information. I created a polygon that I drew just in the port area. So I'm not looking at the entirety of Portugal. I'm not looking at the country. I'm just looking at the polygon that I created in the port region. And then I did the same thing. I just downloaded all of the vessels that were present inside of my personal polygon. You do have to have an account to do this, but again, it is a free account. And if you want to download your own data to Global Fishing Watch, you can also do that. So you have the option of downloading GeoJSON files, shape files, CSVs, and they can appear as polygons, lines, or points. So lots of information for us to look at there. And after I downloaded the data, I was specifically interested into this LNG cano ship because it is a liquefied natural gas tanker, which is a vessel that is designed to transport natural gas in liquid form. So because I knew that it had been in the port of Sines, as we can see here, I said, I want to track all of its route, see where this ship has been before, see the flag that this ship is operating under, what year it was built, even images, right, across different platforms. So I did that. And it's just an example to see how once you have that lead, right, that tiny visibility on the name of the ship, you can expand that to the ones that you're interested in. So if your story is about liquefied natural gas, that is a good way to go. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about crew information and how to gather about this. But I just did a quick search about the LNG cano. And I saw a lot of crew information online that I thought it would be nice to share with you all. So the crew celebrating on LinkedIn that they've had 0 accidents. Also a press release about a seafarer conference that they had. And this is such rich material for journalists, right? Because not only do we start putting faces to this story? But also, we have names of certain people that are attending this conference, and it can just, yeah, expand the possibilities of our story through looking it up online. Also, the company that is responsible for LNG Kano made available a lot of information, basically about their fleet. So the Kano is one of their LNG vessels, but they actually have 30 others. And they don't only operate with LNG vessels, but they have dry bulk carriers and chemical tankers. So you can start profiling what type of company this is. And if you want to go and explore in your own time, it's hyperlinked here. So you can go check that out. And another thing that about the fleet, there's other names of LNG ships that are also part of this fleet. Okay, back on track. Let's move on to ownership. As Davide was saying, sometimes ownership of vessels is very hard to track. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of different categories. So these 6 ones that you see on your screen are the most important ones to have in mind. So the beneficial owner is the company that owns, controls, and profits from the vessel. The registered owner is the individual or the entity that is recorded as the vessel's owner in a national ship registry. The commercial operator would be the company responsible for the financial and operational aspects of a vessel, kind of like hired by either the beneficial owner or the registered owner. The technical ship manager is more responsible for the physical maintenance of a vessel, being sure that it's compliant to all the regulation that it should be. The third-party operator can operate a vessel's day-to-day on behalf of the owner, and the ISM manager is responsible for making sure that the vessel's day-to-day life, infrastructure, crew is aligned to the International Safety Management Code. So yes, lots of terms. You will, more in your research as a journalist, I would say that these 3 to the left pop up more as interest. But of course, knowing the companies that are responsible, the ones on the right, is also important and can give you a bigger overview of your story. So going back to the vessel that we just looked up in Global Fishing Watch, the Damas Wave or the Golden Yara, I would like to invite you all to go to Equasis and see what company is registered as the owner of this vessel. And maybe 2 more minutes for that, so we are still on track of time. Ella, if you could please share the link to Equasis. And also, while navigating these platforms, but this is a personal choice, I normally go more for the IMO of the ship rather than the name, just because the IMO never changes. But I think that in cases, if you put Dama's Wave, it should work as well. If not, the IMO is the same ship from the first example, so you can use that series of numbers. We are, oh, perfect. I see some questions popping in. And yes, everyone, Equasis requires a sign up, Global Fishing Watch as well. They're all free accounts. When I share this presentation with you all, I will share links to them as well so you can create your own profile there. But let's jump to the answer. So we can see that the ship manager is Phoenicia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Marine LLC. It's also the ISM manager, but the registered owner of this specific ship is Damas Wave Shipping Co. And if you want more information about these companies, you can always resort to paid platforms such as Sayari, but there's a lot of information available in free platforms such as Open Corporates, where you can click here and check that out. And this is actually a really nice example because if you can see here to my right, date of effect, you can see here that it's very recent. It was just last month on the 14th of May that the ship changed the ship manager. So I also have this previous screenshot of before last month, where it was actually Seta Chartering and Shipping Co. that was the ship manager, and not Phoenicia Marine. So we actually have some comparison. And the cool thing about Equasis is that we have this historic data, right? They say, this is the registered owner since 2021. And then you can also see how these companies maybe relate to each other, if they have similar people on their board or similar companies as shareholders. Many ways to go from there. And then Equasis will give you also documents of compliance, synthesis of inspections. It will give you a company's fleet. A really important thing that it will also give you the address in which it is registered in. So with the address, you can use it across different search engines and try to see other information about that company and that specific address. So anytime I'm looking at companies related to fisheries, to vessels, to anything that concerns marine life, it is my go-to place. And yeah, highly recommend this platform. But of course, you don't need to stop at Equasis. You can go to Open Sanctions, for example. You can use platforms where you can cross-reference data such as Aleph from OCCRP, or apiary, that is what the Pulitzer Center uses. And even when I went to Open Sanctions, I found more information about this vessel. I found out that it was, sanctioned, the description as to why it was sanctioned, involving the ports of Crimea in Ukraine. So lots of information there. And continuing research on this vessel, looking up in war sanctions, I also found the name of a person that was the master of this vessel. And with that name, you can, of course, look up in other platforms, right? See if you can find this person across crew forums or just OSINT their specific name to see if they appear in any PDFs or presentations. So it's basically one platform leading to another. But for crew data, I really like to use this first website, which is, by the way, called Crew Data, where you can see crewing companies plus some seafarers that have registered there. There's also Maritime Monster that you can know more information. I've heard journalists say that Reddit is a great source because people, even before accepting to work on a ship, they will ask questions about labor conditions on this ship. So that can give you some names. And of course, dorking, right? Anything that, for example, if you're looking into Dama's Wave again, you can put crew and CV to see if any CVs will pop up in your search. You can look up this crew in specific social media, such as Facebook, and then direct your query specifically to the Dama's Wave so it doesn't show anything else. You can also look up file type PDF in the IMO of this vessel to see if there's any CSV. Well, in this case, it will only be PDFs, I'm sorry. But if you had file type CSV, it would show up any CSV that had exactly this sequence of numbers listed. So yeah, that will lead you to great places online, and also sometimes to experts that tweeted about a vessel that you're interested in or could serve as a source for your story. Here are just some links of things that I found looking up the IMO. Here in Vietnam, where we saw was the initial port of registry of this ship. Here talking about the ship's trajectory. Some links for you to explore later. And then also looking at the Dama's Wave in marine traffic, which will give you different results and resources too. Marine traffic has a great compilation of images. So if a source shares an image of a vessel to you and you just want to check that that's the one that you're looking for, you could always resort to it there. Here you can even see, and in the moment that I took this screenshot, it was a couple of weeks ago, but the previous flag of this vessel was actually registered to Comoros. So now we can see that not only it changed ownership, but it also changed flag. The only thing that stayed the same is the IMO. And again, if you're stuck on what OSINT formulas to use, right? If you're doing dorking and you said, okay, I used the IMO, I used the vessel name, I used the company name, but I'm not arriving anywhere that is giving me future leads, you can always resort to LLMs and check it out, ask suggestions of dorks that you can put in your preferred search engine. They can tailor that for you, or use websites such as Perplexity, which I covered a lot in our previous webinar. So one more question coming from me is that sometimes you're not really looking at crews per se, but at people that work on the companies that you're interested in investigating. And now we're moving on to Argentina and looking at a company called Pesantar. So I would like to invite you all to create a dork for me that is focused on LinkedIn. So what would be a dork that is focused on LinkedIn? So I just want to search LinkedIn, nothing else. And I want people only from Pesantar. And we don't have, I'm sorry, but we don't have time. So I'm going to pop to the answer to give Fede enough time for his presentation. But this is the one that I used. Site, LinkedIn, Pesantar, and then I could find the general manager and CEO. Also other people here related, their profiles, images of their operations. So you're not getting the whole search results if you were to put Pesantar, but it's very specific and tailored to what you need. And also looking up Pesantar, for example, you could see some lawyers that were very proud to say that they assisted in giving this specific company a crediting scheme for more than for $34 million. So that is something that would be a venue to investigate, and also documentation, right? What is the type of documentation that Pesantar has online? for example. So I found this document from 2010 that I wanted to use it as an example because you might say, that's super old. Like, is it useful? And I think it is because through the domain of this link, you now know how Pesantad documents its documents, right? You can see this domain and look for more current documents about Pesantad. It might work, it might not, but you already know that this domain is working and is storing data from that time. And now I'll pass it over to Fede.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fer. Let me share my screen. Okay. Cool. Okay. We have been talking already a little about AIS, which is the data that the Global Fishing Watch use. I want to talk a little more about this. Basically, it's something similar to the GPS, right? It's a global position system for vessels that they use to avoid collision. Most vessels of a certain size, they should be using it. And we know that there are these platforms that collect this data and allow us to see it in real time or as a or the past tracks. So the AIS always transmits the identity data about the vessel, like the IMO and the MMSSI, and also things like the speed, the location, and the course. And this information is gold when you are researching because we can see, we can look, and we can try to track what they did in the past, right? Where they've been, if they have been in areas where they shouldn't be, look for weird patterns and more. A few things I want you to take into account about this data. The AIS data is collected by satellite and by some towers that are located in the land, and there could be a lot of errors, could be scattered and fragmentary data. So it's important to know it's not always you can get it complete. This is normal. The data from the AIS is self-reported by the ship. So it means that we don't have control on what they are transmitting, right? So we can't make sure that it is fully accurate. AIS can be turned off. Maybe you have heard about AIS outages.
Fede, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but some participants can't really hear your audio. Could we maybe change from the headphone?
Yes. Second. Sorry about that. Is this better? This is
So much better.
I just put it a little higher. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me keep. Do you still see my screen?
No, I think you need to reshare again.
Okay, let me share it again. Okay, yes. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry about that. Okay, I was saying that you need to take into account that AIS can be turned off. So it's like when you disable your GPS from your phone. So it doesn't mean that necessarily that it's because they are doing something illegal or weird, but it would be a good interesting point or a good lead to start researching when we found some of these missing part of the tracks. Where they didn't turn it off, where they didn't turn it on again. Of course, some ships like military ships, probably we won't see them on the AIS. So these are all things that you need to take into account. And also something that maybe also you heard about, it's about AIS spoofing, which means using like transmitting fake data or trying to fake your identity. So it's also important to take that into account. What I'm trying to say with all these caveats is like, take the AIS data as any other kind of data that you use in journalism with a grain of salt. Don't take it from granted, right? Okay, so I'm showing here the track for a ship in Global Fishing Watch called Consiglia Madre. That's the IMO. And the good thing about Global Fishing Watch is that you can get a lot of free AIS data. There are other platforms like Marine Traffic or IHS that have this kind of data, but usually you need to pay, and they are very expensive. So Global Fishing Watch is specialized in fishing, but, and I think I saw this question in the chat before, they also have data about other kind of vessels. They might not have all the data available that other paid platforms have, but they have a lot. So that's very, very, very good to use. It's a free source that we can use for look into this information. You can see many years back into the past, and using this data, the data from AIS plus an algorithm, through an algorithm, Global Fishing Watch tried to estimate.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but apparently when you share the screen, the audio dropped again. I'm wondering if we can continue. Is it possible to continue without the headphones, or?
I'm not using my, yeah, I can try. Let's see if it works. Can you hear me better now, or is the same?
Chat, can you please let us know if you're here? Same?
The same? Oh.
Okay, for some people it is better.
For me, I can hear, still low. Okay, I'll try to speak louder, guys.
Yes, project your voice. It's theater and ocean reporting.
Okay, guys. Okay. I see that some people hear me okay, but okay. I was saying that you can, Global Fishing Watch use an algorithm to, over this AIS data, to try to estimate what are the kind of activities that a vessel is doing. So, for example, here you can see they can try to estimate when a vessel is fishing, when there is a loiter, when they are loitering. I will go in a minute into that. When there is a potential encounter with another vessel, and when there is a port visit, right? So it's very interesting to look into past tracks and also try to check places where the AIS has been turned off. As you can see here in the screen, right? There is a little orange line, which means completely disconnected from all the other track. That means that for some time the AIS has been turned off. Also, you can see the AIS for different ships at the same time, which is very, very useful. Let me go for a second into Global Fishing Watch and show you this live. This is the how you can see the data. You can see all the light blue, right? Means where you it's a visit to a port. If you enable here, the loitering is usually a purple diamonds, and the white dots are moment for fishing. So I have a question for you, which we don't have a lot of time, so I will just kind of say it and answer it myself. On July 6, 2024, Consiglia Mare had an encounter with another vessel, another fishing vessel. What's the name and how long did the encounter last? So I will show you. We can go. I looked for the Consiglia Madre here, and there are two ways to do it. You can just disable any other event and just focus on the encounter. It will be easy to see it. You can click here and see more, or just click on the name of the vessel and go down and see the events. You have here one encounter event for the timeline that we have below, right? June 1, 2024 to January 1, 2025. And if we click here on the encounter, you can see what's the ship that was, with what ship this the Consiglia Madre met. If you click here on the encounter, you can click on the pin to also add. That will add the other ship, the vessel that was encountered, al captain, also to your working space, and you can try to see what happened around the ships. So that's also very, very useful. You can also get more information about these ships. Like, for example, I think someone talked about also in the chat about economic exclusive zones. If you click on the name of the vessel, of any vessel, if you go to areas, you can see for the time that you have selected and the events that you have enabled, where it was. For example, I can see that most of the time this vessel was in the Maltese exclusive economic zone, but for some time it was also on the Libyan, Tunisian, Italian, etc. So you have a lot of information here about what the ship did in the past, and yeah, from different perspectives. Something really cool that you can do as well, if you go to the summary where you have all the events, you can download all the information here. If you click here on this little icon, you need to be logged in. Looks like I'm logged out for maybe for let's say some time off. But if you click on the small icon, you can download all the data in CSV, and then you can analyze it as Fer did before. Also, and this is very cool as well, if you go to the top, this little download icon will allow you to download the vessel track, which is something that you can then import into other platforms like Google Earth or QGIS, any other platform that you use as a GIS system. For example, I have imported this into Global Fishing Watch, into Google Earth. This is Google Earth, and I imported the track here. Okay, so you can use other GIS system to add different kind of layers of data and mix them. Very cool thing to do from Global Fishing Watch. A few more, maybe a little more advanced things that you can do on Global Fishing Watch is using the AIS data to understand what happened with traffic. I took this example a few weeks ago. I did a webinar, workshop on how to use Global Fishing Watch to track things, and people were saying, what can we do that it's actually something that we can do now, that it's something, it's newsworthy, it's on the news. Okay, let's try to see what happened in the Strait of Hormuz before and after the blockade. You know that in beginning of March, Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, and you can use data from Global Fishing Watch to check this. This slider that I have created in Flourish before after, basically what I did is put together the data from the data from January. This is January, and if we wait, this is only 1st to the 31st of January, and this is for the 1st to the 31st of March. You can see the big difference in traffic. So this is another thing that we can do with Global Fishing Watch. And even more advanced stuff. Let's say that we want to see what are the ships that went through the strait. Remember, there was a blockade, right, on March, so most ships were not able to go through it. Okay, what I did here, this is just an example, and we can explain more, and we will share these slides. Basically, I put together, I hope you can see them because they are not very big, but there's one green area here on the left on the strait and one red area on the right of the strait, okay, which I draw myself. What I did is for March, for the month of March, the first month of the blockade, I used these areas, personalized areas, to download the list of all the vessels that were in any of those areas during March. Okay. After that, I basically find the match, right? Try to look for the matches. What ships were in March, both in this area and in this area, which means that if they haven't learned how to teleport, basically that they went through the strait, right? Because at a certain point they were somewhere, and in another point they were in the other place. This is very cool because when I look for the list of ships, there were around, I think it's 36 vessels. Many of them were sanctioned ships, right? That actually were allowed to pass because they were having some kind of relationship with the Iranian regime army. Another thing that you can see here, for example, if you remember from the previous slides, you can see that here in the middle of the strait is usually when you have the two big lanes, outbound and inbound lanes for the traffic. But if you see in March, most of the traffic went this way up north, closer to Iran. They were forced to go that way. So there is a lot of information and a lot of things that you can get from this tool and using this kind of data. One thing that is important to mention is that if they are there, if the data is not there, it doesn't mean that they haven't crossed. Of course, it's like, because as I said, they can be turned off, right? So you need to take this data with a grain of salt, but it can lead to many interesting leads. Another kind of tool that we can use and we can add to our toolbox for OSINT investigation on satellites are, on vessels are satellite images. Satellite images are very useful to understand what's happening with ships, but also with infrastructure like ports and more. We have tools like free tools like Copernicus browser and Google Earth that allow us to see satellite images and to see satellite images through time. So time series of satellite images. That's very useful to try to see if we can catch one vessel. I always said that it's hard to catch a fish, but it's harder to catch a vessel on a satellite image because the satellite just pass for 1 second and take a picture, but maybe you can try your luck. Some of the things that we can see is if the ships were in some specific place at a certain a certain time, like, I don't know, in a specific port of the US, some kind of encounter. You can see the pictures on the right. Actually, the one on top is from it's from one of Davide's stories where he was investigating these ships that were docking in a private port in Gambia, and he was able to found these ships docked in this port. This is from the one in the top is from Google Earth, and the one below is from Sentinel-2. Something very important, Sentinel-2 has lower resolution, but higher frequency. So it might be good to find some kind of vessels that are big, but might not be helpful to try to track small vessels, right? Google Earth, on the contrary, use different kind of providers like Airbus and Maxar. By the way, Copernicus is from the European Space Agency, so everything is free. Google Earth use different providers with higher resolution, but which a lower frequency for the images. I mentioned that the satellites, I want to reinforce these satellites are not in real time, right? So every time that you see a picture from a satellite, it's always from the past. It could be 1 hour in the past, 1 day, 1 year, but it's always in the past. It's not that you can enter a satellite platform and just see what is happening in real time. People always ask me about that, but sadly, it's not, or maybe luckily, it's not possible because that means that we will be completely surveilled. But as I was saying, it's another useful tool. And another thing to take into account is that most satellites only cover the high resolution or medium resolution satellites only cover the continents and up to 10, 20, 30 kilometers from the coast. So if you're trying to see, look for a ship in international waters, might be difficult to find, right? One very small thing before I go into from Google Earth. I was talking about this story in Gambia. We can fly there. You can see the vessels in the port that Davide tracked. I think this was 2020, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, this is the picture. But you can use this slider here in Google Earth that you enable with this little clock to move in time and see what happened through time. So this is very useful to understand what was happening at a specific port, vessel, etc. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay. Satellite images are very cool, but sometimes we need more information to actually see or understand what's the vessel I'm looking at, right? Because you are looking at a very small vessel from the sky, right? So this slide is not about satellite images, but about pictures from vessels. I don't know why people love photographing vessels. There's like a passion on that. There are like specific pages where people upload the pictures. They are very proud of the pictures they take from vessels. And those are very interesting source and helpful source for us to try to understand how the vessel we are investigating looks like. I put a few resources here like ship spotting, vessel finder, and marine traffic. Even in the free version, marine traffic free version, you can get some of these images, and that might help you to understand is if what you are looking from the satellite, it's actually the ship that you think is, right? Another interesting source to look when you are looking for pictures of vessels is social media. People also share a lot of in social media picture about vessels, and sometimes even the crew. Many times we have our journalists being able to using OSINT techniques that some of the ones Fer told you with the name, looking into social media, right? And you might get pictures of the ship taken by the same crew inside the ship. So that's another thing that you always need to take into account. Another question, this is with satellite images, and I also in the sake of time, I'll just tell you how I did it, but I would like you to, after you see this webinar and when you go into the slides, try yourself because it's very useful. We have a story here from Reuters about the Malaysian authorities that discovered 2 oil tankers doing transferring oil illegally in the middle of the sea, right? So my idea is, are we able to find these ships using the information that we have in this story? The story only mentioned that they were seized. They were located 24 nautical miles to the west of a place, the Muka Head in Malaysia, and they were 2 oil tankers, and the date, of course. But there's no image of you can enter the story, and there's no image of the ships there. So how to do this? We need to use the data we have, location, date, and then use the ruler icon. There's a ruler icon that I will show you in a second in Copernicus that you can use it to measure from this location to the west and try to see if we can find the ship. Actually, I did. This is Copernicus. You can see the ships doing together the 2 oil tankers in the middle of the ocean. If we zoom out, it takes a little to load. You can see because it's a satellite image. You can see that it's actually to the west of this area in Penang, and you can use this ruler to measure. Basically, what I did is just took the ruler. First, I learned how many kilometers, because the ruler is in kilometers. How many kilometers are 24 nautical miles? And then just try to find, it was 44, something like that. And then I just tried find satellite images for that date there. Yeah, we have 44, very good in the chat. And I found the ships. Okay, so you can see this is very cool. Another thing that I suggest you to do to try later when you try this at home is to find if you can find them of Global Fishing Watch. If you can find any of these ships in Global Fishing Watch, this is the date. You can have here the date and the coordinates to look in Copernicus to try this. And it's interesting because if you go to Global Fishing Watch, I don't remember the name of these ships. I don't think it's even on the story. But if you look for the path of some ships that were at this specific specific time in this specific location in Global Fishing Watch, what you will see is that there was only 1 ship. Why? Because the other one has the AIS turned off. That means that in Global Fishing Watch, I would have never find an encounter event because there's only 1 ship. If I use this information, I can see that even if there's no other truck, there was another ship there. Okay, so this is something very cool that you can do as well with satellite images. We are almost very short on time, so we rush a little. Another platform that I suggest you to use is Cerulean. This is very helpful to identify vessels that may have caused oil spills. Cerulean is kind of similar to Global Fishing Watch in the sense that use an algorithm using AIS data from the ships, and it overlaps it with satellite images to try to find potential sources for oil spills. So the oil spills in a satellite images are very easy to find, to detect, because they have specific shapes and specific color. And what they do basically is match. Okay, there's this shape here, and there was this ship going into this direction, right? Might be this the one with the source of the pollution, of the spill. So I suggest you to check that. You can use filter using MMS, the MMSSI, the flag. You can filter by area. You can also look for dark vessels. This is very, very, very useful tool if you're interested in understanding what's happening with oil spills around an area of interest. And before we finish, we are almost in the end. Before going into the questions, I just want to mention two more things that are very useful for you to take into account when you are researching vessels, which are first port and port records. I think I saw a question in the chat asking about how can I see how many vessels or which vessel were at specific port for some amount of time. You can do that on Global Fishing Watch. You can see this on the screenshot on the slide. Basically, there is a toggler that on the left that says port visit events, and you can click on the port and you will have all the vessels, the list of all the vessels that were docked for some time at that port during the timeline that you select. This is very useful because if you're interested in a specific vessel, you can see where it went, but maybe from that port you can get data from other vessels that might be related to the vessel you are researching, right? So it might give you more leads. Ports, this is good to know also, usually have serve different purposes. Okay, we know we have ports where you are mostly for passengers, but there also you have ports that are mainly for oil or specific cargo. So it's good to understand this and to try to understand what's the port we are looking at to understand why the ship might be going here. When we have a port of interest, because because some ship that we are looking at was docked at that port, it's good to start looking about other kind of information, like documents that we can find about the people, companies that we can find about this port. In this example, I think you were researching in Colombia, in the port of Guapi, and you found this, I think it's kind of a resolution or something signed by this Mr. Andrés Mania Reyes, which is kind of the captain of the port, so a guy that is the authority there. And then you can use his name, right? Like Fer told you with Google Docs to find more information, maybe more documents signed by him, more or companies related, etc. Another source of good information for you when you're researching trucks and vessels, and in general when you are working with the ocean, is go and look into the public entities that regulates the seas and the activities in ports, right? Every country has its own, and many of them, it depends on the country, but many of them have a website with information, with public open data, right? So for example, this is the website for the Dirección General Marítima, which is the entity that regulates everything related to seas, the sea in Colombia, and it has actually a lot of open data. It has actually one specific part of the website for transparency and open data. And if the data is not available, you can always try to do a FOIA request, right? And probably these are the guys you need to request the data for, right? And in many sites, there are also instructions on how to ask for this data. So you have better chances of getting it. What's the law that regulates the access to public information? It's how do you need to do this public request? Okay, so always have in mind these public entities. This is an example, also a Google Doc using this site that we were looking at 1 second ago, this entity from Colombian entity that regulates the sea, about to look, this is site dmar.mil file tab PDF Gorgona between quotes. So basically I'm saying look for all the PDF files that are within this site that mentions Gorgona. Gorgona is an island, that Colombian island that we were researching, investigating for a project. I'm interested in learning more about this. And this is a way I can get more official information about this name. It could be an island, it could be a name of a vessel, it could be the name of a guy, it could be a company, whatever. The interesting thing about this is like you are using official information and using OSINT over official information to get all you can get for your investigation. I did PDF. You can look for doc, you can look for XLS files. There are a lot of information in spreadsheets as well. It's interesting how, and sometimes there are even information that you can't access like directly through a link in the website, but it's still on the website, right? So if you do these kind of things, you will be able to find it. On the right, you can see a document that was actually talking about an environmental impact that they did in this island that we found doing this using these talks. And finally, and this is the last point before we go into questions, vessel and fishing regulation. We have been talking about authorities, entities, and something that is very important for you to understand and to know is the regulation and the laws that apply to a country that you are researching, right? That can be, the laws and the regulation can be very different in different countries, right? So what are the things that are allowed for vessels to do? What are the conditions that the vessel need to comply? What are the inspections that they need to go through? What are the kind of cargo that they are allowed to have, regulation for fishing and more. So we need to understand these kind of things in our investigation to understand where we can find, where we have promising links and leads, and also to give context to what we are looking at, right? So very quickly, two good resources to go into this. The OLO Oceans has this global fishing, I think it's global fishing legislative database, something like that, which is a database with regulations from many countries, more than 50 countries. And this is very useful to get all this information in one specific place, right? As you can see on the right, this is an example from Argentina, my country, where you see there is something that says oversight body, gives you the name of the entity that actually regulates, right? So then you can use the techniques that we have been talking about before to find more information on their website. Many of this data that you will find in the ocean is data that they got through FOIA requests. So it's data that you won't be able to find in other places, and it's not something that you will find publicly available like very easily. So I recommend you to check that resource. And you also have this global integrated shipping information system that also have a lot of information about shipping records, companies, vessels, and more. And the last one, before we jump into the questions, I hope you have a few more time to stay with us, a few more minutes. Indonesia, if I ask you in Indonesia, what is the penalty for any fishing vessel that it's making use of gear or substance that are prohibited under the Regulation 6 and fishing in the Indonesian exclusive economic zone? If you go into OLO Ocean, you will get the answer, which I will do it in a second. but I suggest you to go and try. You will see for every country. Shall be a fine of not more than 75 million rupiah and the withdrawal of the fishing permit. So this is the kind of information that you will be able to find and will help you to understand and to give context to your investigation and to understand if some of the practices, some of the things that you found are currently within or the law or the regulation, or there is something that you need to investigate more. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Fede, Davide, Ella. Thank you, everyone, for sending us lots of questions. Sorry that we're a bit over time, but we will try to address all of them. So, first one here on my list, coming from Louisa. Do I understand correctly that Global Fishing Watch is not only for fishing vessels? Yes, Louisa, that is correct. We can see through vessel presence all different kinds of vessels. And that also brings me to the next question, which people were kind of asking how to visualize things on Global Fishing Watch. So I will just go to a very quick demo here. So, for example, the way that I would do it, right, is first to define what is it the time frame that you're interested in. So let's say you're not interested in the whole first semester of the year. You just want to see from April onwards. Cool. And then I would tag right here if I want to see the vessels that were transiting in a certain EZZ of a country. For this specific example, I'm going to use Chile, okay? So this is the layer that we're going to be looking at. So I would tag the activity that I'm interested in. Awesome. My map starts to get very, very pink, even though it's just a couple of months that we're looking into. Once I hover over here, it will give me some names of vessels, but this is where you get your information. So if you go to this little arrow, it will say download visible layers for this area. Let's click there. Yes, this is the area. It's Chile that I'm interested in. This is the time range. I want to receive the information as a CSV. So let's download my data. This might take a while. Let's see. I didn't. Not disappointing, Global Fishing Watch ever. So it will give me a zip file here. And then I will go to layer activity data, open this up. And open my spreadsheet. Nice, which is very similar to the ones that we have shown in the presentation. We have the time range, the vessel type, their IMOs, all this information that is relevant to the time range that we were looking at in Chile. So I just thought that this tackled many of the questions. Let me stop sharing my screen. So we can move on to other ones.
I can show how to track all the vessels that dock at a single location over a period of the year. So basically, it's similar. You can, let me share my screen for a second. Okay, so basically you need to enable here to do port visit events, right? Remember that you have the timeline here, right? First, and then you have the port. It takes some time, and then you can click in any of these ports. And for example, if I click in this one, I should have I mean, I have one June 1 to Jan 1. You can do the timeline that you want using this. So if we want to do this, the full, let's do 2024, 2025. So this will be for the whole year 2025. And if I click here, I go to the port that I want, like this one, and you click, and you get all the list of, if you click here, see all the entry, you have all the data from all the vessels that came here, sea vessels, right? And you can also download it. It takes time. It takes time. Let's wait for a second. Oil fishing watch always takes some time. It's loading the vessels, still loading the vessels. But you can see how many and what time of the year, right? So probably in April, maybe it's high season for fishing or something, and there are more vessels coming in this port. And then you have here all the vessels. Yeah, you can also download the list here as CSV.
Great. Thank you for showing that, Fede. We have another question from Anna asking how Global Fishing Watch gives us the listing of vessels on a country's EZZ, since she's not really sure if that database means that those vessels were near the EZZ or actually inside the EZZ. So, Anna, when I think that's similar to the example that I gave before. When you download them and the two layers that you have are vessel presence and a country's EZZ, it will only give you the list of what is inside the EZZ, right? And that can be done, for example, because in Global Fishing Watch, let me share again, lots of live demos. We can see the EZZs, which are tagged here, all of these green lines, right? We use the one from Chile, but here's the one from Peru, from Brazil here. And we can just hover over and see all of them. But we can also check out marine protected areas, because maybe we're interested in the vessels that have been inside of this light green area. So there's all different layers. It's kind of like layers on a cake. There's all these different layers that we can look into. But just be sure that the ones that you're interested in are tagged on, so you have exactly the type of data that you're looking for when you do the download.
Remember that you can also upload your own area of interest. You have already some in Global Fishing Watch. You have the marine protected areas, you have the economic exclusive economic zones, but you can also add your own. You can draw it in the platform or bring it from another platform like Google Earth or QGIS and do the analysis for that specific region.
Okay. I know that Davide already answered some questions via writing. I think we are at our last question, which is coming from Gibson. If anybody has another one, please do share in the chat before we close. But Gibson is asking, what are some of the digital tools you can use to track movement of a ship, for instance, in Zambia or in Mozambique Bay? I think all the ones that we have covered would be useful for you. I would start with Global Fishing Watch, going to the area of Mozambique and Zambia, and doing these two examples. If you're interested in a port, as Fede showed, go to that specific port. If you're interested in the whole exclusive economic zone of the country, then download the data for the whole zone. Davide?
Hi. No, I want to reply to because I see that there are some Q&A questions in the QA space, maybe, and there was one for me from Akhil Ranjan that was asking what are the key signs for such fishing activities in area if there is no tip-off by insider. And yeah, because that's a good point, because in my case, for instance, I had the information on the ground. So how do you do by distance? And the general tip for me would be to go through small-scale fisheries association, for instance. But normally there is always some kind of conflict at sea. And so if you go to ports, if you can't go to the ports, maybe you can try to contact some associations of fishers that are there. And normally they would reveal it. Like my story on Guinea-Bissau, most of I started from small-scale fishers and they all told me the same. This is what is happening. And so you have a starting point. So if you're not able, or you can't go physically to one place, maybe you can try to get in touch with local fishers that are kind of often the victims of illegal fishing. So that's a general answer for Akil.
Great, thank you. And yes, there is the Q&A box. One question coming from Janine from the Q&A box is, how can we know the amount of catches a vessel had and the species catched? That is a big question. So starting from the first half of the question, the amount of catches. So one of the identifiers of a vessel is the gross tonnage. That means the weight that a vessel can support, right? There's different ways of measuring this. For example, if a vessel is very heavy inside the water, you can see that the water goes more up towards the vessel. If it is very light, it goes more down. So you can always think about, okay, how much weight does this vessel actually support? And then try to calculate from there. You can have tips from sources about the species that are catched. Different quotas of different species are allocated to different companies and fleets, right? So this would be in the documentation that you would be looking into, seeing if that specific vessel that belongs to that specific company is allowed by a government agency to catch that species. And then, of course, you can compare that to a lot of different, even academic studies, right, that show you where different species are depending of the time of the year. And then you can go back to Global Fishing Watch and see, did that vessel spend a lot of time in this specific area? But yeah, yours is a very big question. I'm interested if Davide and Fede have more insights on measuring the amount of catches and the species catched.
Oh, yeah, just quickly, it's like, yeah, you can pass through like this, the mathematical calculation with the information you have, or if you know how to get into how to obtain that information from the state where where this vessel is operating. I don't know what country are you from, but oftentimes there is a kind of registry of all the vessels, and maybe are not publicly findable on Google, but if you request it, often you can have it. At least in the European Union, you can. There is always a catch certificate, so everything should be tracked. Then it's another story if there is some mislabeling, but normally every state should have some sort of registry. So I would investigate in your case. If you have already a name of a vessels, to ask to the Ministry of Fishery if you can get more information about that vessels, what species, and normally how much they can catch.
They did this one about spoofing. I will direct to you. So Bal wants to know, how do I know if a ship is spoofing its location?
Difficult. It's a very difficult question. I mean, there's no specific way that there's not a platform that detects spoofing. You should look for weird patterns in the AIS. You can always remember that we said that, and I don't remember if I said that, but when I talk about satellite images, I always said they can turn off their AIS, or they can change it, but they can't avoid being photographed from the sky. So maybe you can use satellite images to check if the ship is saying that it's in a specific location, and you have a satellite images from that location, and you see that they actually at that time, and actually the ship was not there, the vessel was not there. That's a way to find that there's something wrong on the way they transmit the AIS data. Look for weird patterns. Sometimes you'll see MMSI or IMO is the most important identifier, but sometimes you see also with MMSI that you see at the same time in two different places, or that, I don't know, today is in Argentina and tomorrow the ship is in the north, I don't know, in Norway, and it's not possible. There's no way they can do that in 24 hours. So these are kind of patterns. You should look into the patterns of the track to try to see anormal things. I would suggest you to, we are not expert in spoofing. It's actually pretty hard to identify, but there are experts, there are platforms that you can, Kepler, I think it's one that they have a good team. It's paid, but maybe you can approach as a journalist and see if they can help you if you have a specific ship that you want to track. But yeah, basically looking for weird patterns in AIS and try to use other tools like satellite image or pictures, like actual pictures, timestamp pictures from the vessel to try to see if what you are seeing in AIS data is different what's happening in a picture in reality.
Great. We have 2 more questions to go. Thank you for everyone who has stayed with us for 1 hour and 40 minutes. But these are the last 2, and one is coming from Jai Shri. I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. What can journalists do for their own safety while reporting on shipping vessels, etc.? I come from a country where journalists are routinely targeted for doing their jobs. That is a very tricky question. My go-to phrase is to always protect yourself and your sources first. Nobody is below a story, and the people are more important than any stories. So that can be done in a variety of things, keeping your data safe, your communication on Signal, email, Proton Mail. So yeah, just having all the safety measures, both physical and digital, to protect yourself and your sources. Fede, Davide, would you like to comment?
I can add something. We not only work with the ocean, we also have fellows, and we work with journalists that work in many different dangers and areas with conflict. Basically, every time that they go into the field, we suggest them to make or pursue an investigation if it's in a country, as you said, where journalists are being targeted. Basically, a risk assessment. So you can, in advance, before starting your investigation or before going into the field, you can put together. There are resources to that. We can also share after. Some of the resources that we have for that, but basically a list of things that you need to consider, like a threat model that you want to check. What are the things that might put me in danger, which can be, as first said, like digital to physical, right? And also a disease. I don't know. Maybe you are going to report into a country that, I don't know, it's an endemic area for some kind of disease, and you need to also take this into account. So you always encourage our journalists when they are doing fieldwork, but in general, as an assessment for the investigation, to put together a risk assessment. And we can share resources for that in the follow-up email that we will send.
Yes, and going to our very last question, which is coming from Nicole. And Davide, I will direct this one at you. Nicole says, not a technical question, but a fun one. What is the wildest thing you have seen a ship do during your research?
Well, it's I don't know, like you have seen now Global Fishing Watch, and it's what it could be. It's like Now, on top of my head, I remember one vessel that suddenly it completely changed name and the flag while moving, and so it's like at some point it just disappear, and then you have to find out what it turned into. And so it's I think it's an interesting field, the one of shipping, because there are so many tricks for people that manage or owns the ship and to change the identity. There is lots of hidden stuff. But yeah, it's sometimes like it's the ownership, or see how much of these ships that are the wall that you find when you arrive to some offshore registry, and it's like yeah, I don't know if it's that wild, but yeah, there is a lot of opacity there, and it's interesting because only by looking at these points on the map you can figure out, okay, this is very suspicious. It could be like a rabbit hole. Just be careful because you can spend a lot of time. So it's good that you have like a sharp idea of what you are looking at, and moving on and you can eventually find something that reflects on the real world, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think that my fun fact is seeing ships that every year they change their registered owner. So it's not necessarily a red flag, but it does raise an eyebrow that you're like, this ship is changing hands a lot. And sometimes you will go inside Aquaces and have a huge list and see that over the past, 10 years, it has changed ownership 8 times. So yeah, it's just a little fun fact there. And you, Fede?
It's not fun, but it's something that for me was like, wow, it's interesting how tools really help you to visualize things in one story. And actually, we'll have a webinar about this in a few weeks or a few months, I guess. Katie McHugh, one of our the journalists that work with us, one of our former fellows, ORN, she was looking into these vessels that were being abandoned by the owners, right? With the crew left in the vessel, right? So basically, they are not allowed, for example, by the port to go into the port. So basically, you have the ship staying there, problems to have access to water and to food supplies, and usually, as I said, is difficult. And she was getting all this information. She was able to WhatsApp with one of the sailors that were there in the vessel, and she had all this story, very interesting story from the inside, but we didn't have any actual pictures or anything from the vessel. And he didn't share the exact dates. He said some months, and we were spending some time in Global Fishing Watch and in Google Earth, and we were able to see the ship, and it was one ship staying there, like close to a bay, and it made me wonder, right? You see all these images with all these things happening. It's just one more ship somewhere, but when you match that story to that image to what actually was happening there, right? There were 20 or 30 people waiting with no food, no water. So yeah, I think that it's a very interesting field to report, and these kind of tools will allow you to find many many interesting things.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I think that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Fede, Davide, and Ella. And thank you all for participating and being with us today. I would like to remind you all that this is a series of webinars, right? So we have number 3 coming up, and it's talking about investigating the ocean, but following the money and understanding who profits from the ocean. So really encourage you all to register for that session. And the final one will be about seafarers and reporting on labor rights and human rights at sea. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate your time and interest. And yes, the materials will be sent to you, the recording, the slides. If you have any lingering questions, do reach out to us. Thank you.
Bye.